In fact, in the movie, we had used a lot of smoke. And Yojimbo, if you remember, there's this beautiful shot of, Toshiro Mifune standing in the center of the village with his sword and, there's
climax. The climax scene, I think, when he comes back into the village.
Yeah, and there are these bunch of people standing. So the last shot of the film was shot when there was actually rain. I mean, last shot of the action sequence.
You said. So can you demonstrate that point with one of your favorite shots from Captain Miller?
I think Pechama narrating the temple history to the audience, I think that's a very impactful.
Time the camera comes back to the cracked windshield. I want to understand a bit more about why that scene was framed that way.
See, firstly, the truck just broke.
Yeah.
I don't think the guy should have survived.
Fablemantsல வந்து Ford வந்து ஸ்பீல்பர்க் கிட்ட பேசுற மாதிரி ஒரு சீன் இருக்கும். அதுல he'll say ஹொரைசன் வந்து எப்பவுமே ஐ லெவல்ல நடுவுல வைக்காத ஃப்ரேம்ல கீழ இருந்தா இன்ட்ரஸ்டிங்கா இருக்கும், ஐ லெவலுக்கு மேல இருந்தா இன்ட்ரஸ்டிங்கா இருக்கும் அப்படினு.
Sky and half earth. Probably the subject is confused which way to take.
Interesting.
Whether you want to go forward or backward.
Was that an homage to the Avengers hero shot that I saw? இந்த மூணு பேரும் வரும்போது
என்ன ஷாட் எடுக்க போறோம்? Okay, this sprawl, sir. I was telling the stunt coordinator கொஞ்சம் மாஸா இருக்கு.
வெல்கம் டு சினிமா எக்ஸ்பிரஸ். இன்னைக்கு நம்ம கூட தனுஷ், பிரியங்கா மோகன் மற்றும் பலர் நடிச்சு அருண் மாதேஸ்வரன் டைரக்ஷன்ல வெளிவந்திருக்கிற கேப்டன் மில்லர் படத்தோட சினிமாட்டோகிராஃபர் சித்தார்த்தா நுனி இருக்காரு. Hi.
How are you? I'm good, thank you.
Arun Matheshwaran is known for his pronounced visual language. He has his own style and he's very particular about what he wants in the frame. So அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு pronounced film language இருக்கிற ஒரு டைரக்டர் கூட ஒர்க் பண்ணும்போது what was the references that you got? Did he come with his own ideas in mind? First உள்ள அப்ரோச் பண்ணும்போது உங்களுக்கு எப்படி ஆரம்பிச்சது இந்த படத்தோட visual language?
See, so when I first met him, he had shown me some of the footage that they've already shot. So I came in after they've shot for 10 days. Shreyas Krishna, cinematographer, he had started the film and for some reason he couldn't, continue. So I got into the project after they shot for 10 days of montages and stuff like that. So it shown me some of the footage when I first met him in December. And the first thing I said was, this looks like Akira Kurosawa's films, the framing and things like that. And I'm a big
fan of Kurosawa.
I mean, he's one of my, I love his films. I mean, they have such strong visual language. Even in film school, we have learned his work, where cinematography, where, Seven Samurai, where there's this low angle shot of, five of the samurais standing. And I used to conduct workshops when I was younger, just to get some, extra revenue and stuff like that. And I enjoy teaching too. So I used to use that image to teach, to talk about framing and things like that. So when I watched that, the footage, immediately I said Akira Kurosawa. And somehow I think there was a little bit of understanding that, it is, because if you look at the film, there is, clear influence from, films like Seven Samurai and, other films like Sholay. You can kind of tell, So it's about a village and, it's about, it's villagers and there are people who are coming together to save and, take care of the village. So for me, and also Yojimbo was one of our, biggest references. In fact, in the movie, we had used a lot of smoke. And Yojimbo, if you remember, there's this beautiful shot of, Toshiro Mifune standing in the center of the village with his sword and, there's
climax. The climax scene, I think, when he comes back into the village.
Yeah, and there are these bunch of people standing in front of him. So in that shot, there's immense amount of smoke. So if you watch the first shot of the film, where Pechama is explaining, to the spoilers for this, in this.
Obviously, there's going to be a lot of spoilers, so please, padam paathuட்டு vaanga.
So if you look at the first shot of the film, where the introductory shot of Pechama talking about the history of the temple and the village, there is smoke going in the background. So it's the inspiration from it comes directly from
Okay.
Akira Kurosawa's films and the visual grammar of Akira
Because
Kurosawa.
Kurosawa is known to use elements of nature like wind,
Absolutely.
rain, right?
Wind, rain. So if you look at the film, my primary lighting we have done with smoke, wind, fire,
See,
all the elements.
the fire also, it's like it alludes to his name, Annalisen, and
I didn't know that Annalisen actually meant fire till like 2 days ago.
Anal means
Yeah, Anal means because I'm Telugu, so but it was a conscious decision to shoot the film with just using fire. The night sequences were all shot just with fire. There was no lighting used. There was nothing. Initially, we started off with a different reference, which is All Quiet on the Western Front for the night sequences.
Okay.
Where that is why one scene it comes in the after the interval. That was the first scene that we had shot, night scene that we had shot. It would have some hint of blue moonlight, where the villagers are getting beaten up, and so there's a backlight is blue. So that was the only day we shot with moonlight. After that, we sent away all the cranes and everything because we thought that okay, let's use the elements like how it was back then.
Okay.
So if it was black, it was black.
Okay.
So that was a conscious decision. So this film primarily was shot with the aid of the elements of nature, which is air,
that the landscape
fire.
comes through too, right?
Absolutely.
Like the
dust and so I think if someone's appreciating the cinematography of the film, it is basically appreciating the nature of the place that we shot at.
Okay.
Because the place because I had come in a little later, the locations are already picked up. And one of the first things that I noticed was that they have chosen best locations possible. And I think as a cinematographer, it's like a dream because anywhere I keep the camera, it looks beautiful. Even on a top light at 12 o'clock, Kutralam looks beautiful because there's so much of wind and, there's so much of effect of wind on the effect of, the nature on the film. So in the 6 months that we've been there in Kutralam, we almost shot like 80-90% of the film was shot in Kutralam. And I think we experienced so much of diverse weather and, we had kind of shot the climax over a period of like 30-40 days. And the weather had changed from summer to rainy season back then. So the last shot of the film was shot when there was actually rain. I mean, last shot of the action sequence. It was actually raining and we stopped because it was raining and but somehow we were like, okay, on camera you can tell when there is droplets. And Kutralam, there's this thing called saral or tural or something.
Saral.
So it comes for like a few minutes and then goes away. And you could see the saral coming from like, from the mountains. So we were like, we all became like weather experts, I think. So it was beautiful, but it was very challenging. But my colorist, Mr. Prasad Shomshekar, he's done such a great job because I was so worried that, how do we even out? Because we had shot the sequence over 30-40 days and through the day, Kutralam looks different. Like afternoon, it's by 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, the sun kind of like starts going beyond the mountains. So we could shoot only till 5:15.
Okay.
But some days we had to shoot till 6 o'clock. So I was actually quite worried about how to give it an even tone. So initially we did a lot of research on this, like grading is a very important aspect for, I take a lot of time on that. So from December till April, we kind of like worked a lot on like what is the correct look for the film. And we did research about, okay, what is the time period, 1930s, 40s, how did they shoot back then? How did the films which were shot in that time period, which is Saving Private Ryan and, movies like that, how did they get their references from? So one of the biggest references was Saving Private Ryan for our film. I mean, initially, where they did a process called bleach bypass. Which what it does is it blows out the highlights and gives a softer tones, like, so that was kind of, okay, we were thinking, okay, maybe we can go with this, that kind of a thing. Due credit to, the colorist and, also the interest from the director. And so it's like, I'm very happy because I think the film looks truly international.
It does.
Yeah.
No, you have a lot of action sequences, right, in this film. Which was the most complex for you as a cinematographer to film?
The huge bomb blasts.
Towards the end?
Towards the end. The
Okay.
climax sequence. that needed a lot of meticulous planning because we had multiple cameras looking at the action from different directions, and we had to do it multiple times. We can't just have one blast, right? So
you can't go again.
Yeah, you can't keep going again and again and again. So we had to plan that so perfectly, and I think it was such a great learning for me, and I'm truly grateful. Honestly.
Okay. So let's come back to the first scene. எடுத்த உடனே வந்து it opens on a black and white scene, and black and white sequences are used anachronistically, like away from the linear timelineல இருந்து இருக்கும்போது வர்ற சீன்ஸை வந்து black and whiteல காமிச்சிருப்பாங்க. ஸோ for a normal person like us, like what is the significance of shooting on black and white, and like why do you think
black and white is like the soul of the like if you look at a black and white picture, you kind of the color is all gone and you can get into the soul of that image is what I feel. So I love black and white, and you know, Arun also might, you know, his films that consistently had black and white.
Yeah.
So I enjoy doing black and white. It's I think it adds an additional layer of a touch of, you know, a touch of beauty. I don't know. I think it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Okay, so you've quoted your favorite cinematographer, Roger Deakins, a lot of times, and you spoke about how good cinematography is not about beautiful shots.
Correct.
It's about how the story is conveyed, or like how it serves the story, how it serves to move the broader story, you said. So can you demonstrate that point with one of your favorite shots from Captain Miller, or like the difference between a beautiful shot and a shot that moves the story forward?
I think without a subtext of the cinematography, you know, what, you know, if you keep a shot, you need to kind of understand what is going on there without the dialogue actually being said. So I think that's where true cinematography wins. What kind of mood, like for example, black and white, use of black and white. Why are we using it? Right? It is basically to make an impact. It's an impact statement. Saying that, hey, notice this, we're doing something.
Okay.
It's not just for the sake of style. It is basically when you just, the previous frame is color, and then suddenly you get into a, you know, image which is starkly different from your previous image. You're telling the audience something. So I can't, at this point, if you say, I think Pechama narrating the temple history to the audience, I think that's a very impactful shot.
Okay.
It's a single long take, you know, coming from the close-up of Ichama, and then slowly you see the world around. And the temple is like standing tall, right?
Nice.
And then, you know, you kind of, that shot accentuates what the...
And it's also beautiful myth building also.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're it's from a close-up, you're taking a long, you know, so the audience kind of is introduced to the world.
Nice. I like,
you know,
that.
So that's a interesting. So when you're actually taking the shot, you might not be thinking, but it's a subliminal thing, right?
Puridu.
It, you know, you can't figure why you're doing, but you know, it's something that comes, you know, if you might feel it's spontaneous, but when I'm saying this, I'm like, yeah, you know, actually that is what is happening, you know.
Okay.
So that's an impactful scene, and then, you know, we have Miller dancing around the fire. So that's another very we shot it in, I think, one night or something, if I'm not wrong, and it was just happened in a span of 3-4 hours, but in the film it's so prominent.
Yeah.
You know, so I think yeah, these are impactful
like
scenes.
And the whole thing was shot in natural light, I assume.
Yes,
the whole
yes.
Was it like choreographed, because it is supposed to be him like animalistic dancing around the fire kind of a scene, but adu vandu choreograph pannangala illa like he just went with the vibe?
It is there was no choreographer on set. It was so I think that way Arun is so good when he's dealing with actors. The way he gets the performance out of them is, I think it's great, because I don't know how he does it. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, a lot of natural light was used in this film, and of course it's a creative choice. You could use it or not use it, but how does natural lighting makes it better, or like can you make a case for it?
It is not at all about natural light versus artificial light.
Okay.
It is never about that. It is about what does the story demand and how do you want to see it.
Okay.
Right? It comes with your with your background, where do you come from? Right? What kind of films do you like? What kind of, where are the places that you visited? These are the things that come into your,
your preference.
Your experience of life. So it's about, all that comes onto the screen, right? It is not about, which is better. There's nobody can say that. It's about, I come from an independent film background. I come from my earliest film was shot like with 20 lakhs, the whole film. And when you have such low budget, you have to come up with ways to make the film look interesting. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Hollywood also has cinematographers, and they use, and I had worked on Life of Pi, and I have seen
VFX.
Claudio.
Right?
Yes, I've seen Claudio Miranda use no light.
Okay.
So if $100 million film, right, the cinematographer is not using lights, why should you?
Nice.
I've seen we were shooting in Pondicherry, and there was this classroom sequence. There was only one light. There was a light at the back of the room bouncing off the roof. So you don't need big lights. You don't need, just because you're shooting a big film doesn't mean that you need hundreds of lights. It is about, how do you want to tell the story?
Okay.
What is your opinion about the matter?
So there was this particular scene that I wanted to talk to you about. Just right before the interval, when Miller and his bandits go after this officer, British officer, and our car topple aayirum, and then he goes away, taking this thing, and our car topple aayirum, camera shot வந்து இந்த windshield உள்ள இருக்கும், windshield cracked இருக்கும், and we see Miller running, and then the other people also follow him, and every time the camera comes back to the cracked windshield. I want to understand a bit more about why that scene was framed that way. And the cracked windshield valiya and the chase scene நம்ம காமிக்கிறோம்.
It's the end of the chase. Process? It is the end of the chase, and basically keeping the camera there kind of tells that, okay, it's firstly, the truck just broke.
Yeah.
I don't think the guy should have survived.
அப்படி டாப்ல ஆனதுக்கு
அப்புறம் still he's come out, but okay, he's come out. So you needed to, this is basically an establishment that, okay, through that, and
so because it kept coming back to the cracked windshield, so I was
see, it's a recurring thing. Why
he's trapped into the,
no, nothing like that. It's basically it's the aftermath of the whole chase. And now it's all done. Whatever is behind. So just to give it the idea that, okay, it's all done, so they're all running away from the whole situation.
Okay. So
I don't think it's a I didn't think it was a very prominent thing. It's more of okay, the chase is done, so they're all going towards a certain
okay. No, it's I want to double check this with friends and all, and they were also the kale அப்படினாங்க. So because it kept coming back to the broken windshield, so I was what are they trying to tell us? ஏன்னா ரெண்டு மூணு தடவை வரும்போது maybe
I don't think there was much. I think it's just the fact that the chase is done.
Okay, it's when the same frame appears again and again, you're okay, what am I missing now?
Okay.
The editing la maybe. So I was okay, நம்மளுக்கு தான் ஏதோ புரியல போல, என்னன்னு பாத்துருவோம் அப்படி நினைச்சிட்டு இருந்தேன்.
As far as I know, I don't think there was more subtext to that. Yeah. I'll check with Arun if he has an idea.
Please. This going in, this is about is set in an interesting period, and is set in an interesting because in this period set ஆகிற படம் வந்து mostly independence struggle பற்றி இருக்கும், இல்லைனா அது சம்மந்தப்பட்டதாக இருக்கும், politics சம்மந்தப்பட்டதாக இருக்கும். But this is one man's evolution into and his disillusionment with power and the power structures எல்லாமே. So this was on the period, but it also uses other settings also. ஒரு bandits இருக்காங்க. It's an interesting setting. So period filmன்றதுனால, did you consciously choose to avoid any visual cliches that are usually shown in these kind of films? Because period and war drama nale, we have some visual irukkalamla, sila visuals namak mind la varum. So did you think of that?
No, I think some of my favorite period, see, it's about, again, what do you like? Right. I haven't seen too many of them. I think my biggest references would have been Barry Lyndon. is one film, and then like
It's again a fully naturally lit padam la barrel.
They used fire, they used
Candles and all.
So that was a film we had discussed. So I think we did get inspired from classic films which we enjoyed watching, like, you know, say Full Metal Jacket, you know, these kind of you know, Kubrick films, like, you know. And so that's what I think. It depends upon what kind of filmography you enjoy watching. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so Arun Matheshwaran recently talked about how he was interested in making a prequel as well as a sequel. இப்போ ப்ரீக்வல் ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம் அப்படின்னா இன்னும் ஃபர்தர் பேக் இன் டைம் போகிறோம் அப்படின்னா இப்போ லைக் அந்த அந்த கதையிலே கொரோனாருன்ற ஒரு டெய்ட்டி பற்றியும் ஹவு யூ யூஸ் டு டிஃபெண்ட் த வில்லேஜ் இட்ஸ் அ மித் இல்லையா. சே ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் த ப்ரீக்வல் டெல்ஸ் இன் டு that story, like upper what kind of visual treatment would you like to work on?
I'll have to listen to this.
Listen to the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how do you can't just say that like that. So it depends exactly depends upon what is the story demand. Like,
has he spoken to you about his ideas?
No. I mean, I have a general idea, but he has to.
Okay, there is a general idea then.
It could change. We don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So this one, just before this interview, we talked about Fablemans. So Fablemans-la வந்து டைரக்டர் ஹென்ரி ஃபோர்ட் வந்து ஸ்பீல்பர்க் கிட்ட பேசுகிற மாதிரி ஒரு சீன் இருக்கும். அதில் ஹீல் சே ஹொரைசன் வந்து எப்பவுமே ஐ லெவலில் நடுவில் வைக்காத ஃப்ரேமில் கீழே இருந்தால் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்காக இருக்கும், ஐ லெவலுக்கு மேலே இருந்தால் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்காக இருக்கும் அப்படின்ட்டு. இப்போ கேப்டன் மில்லரில் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா லாட் ஆஃப் ஷார்ட்ஸ் வேர் தி ஹொரைசன் இஸ் இன் தி ஐ லெவல் நடுவில் இருக்கும். So what is your like thought on that? Did you think about
subtext?
Okay.
Like, what is the subtext that you want to
rules and
narrate? So there are rules, like, you know, in photography there is a rule of thirds. There is also the, you know, the Fibonacci spiral. You know, these are all ideas. I mean, not ideas. These are all rules which kind of give you a generic idea of what is beautiful. What could make a good picture. If you follow these rules, you kind of almost have like a, you know, an aesthetically pleasing picture based on how our brains are hardwired. Right? Like, you see the Fibonacci spiral right from the micro to the macro. It's these are the rules the universe is governed by. Right? What kind of a man or a woman that you, what kind of facial structure are you do humans find attractive? There are rules for that. Right? But going beyond that, a frame, when you put a frame, it is primarily about the subtext of what you're trying to tell the audience or trying to tell the viewer. And that is defined by the story. Like, when you just asked me about how can I, you know, how would you want a prequel or a sequel to look like? I cannot tell. Because it is dependent upon what is the story. So in the same way, that is again from the micro to the macro. If you look at it from macro to micro, if you go for the frame of that particular frame that you've framed, is it conveying the emotional what the character is going through at that time, or the subtext of what you want the audience to perceive?
Okay.
For example, if you put I'm generically saying, if there is a frame that, you know, you have half sky and half earth, probably the subject is confused which way to take.
Interesting.
Whether you want to go forward or backward, whether you want to go. So it is the subtext of what the character is going through. In that kind of a situation, if I keep the horizon on the lower thing, it could be stylized, but it might not be conveying the
intent of the scene.
Yeah, the intent of the moment. So there is cinema verite, right? Like, I'm a big proponent of the French New Wave, where, you know, where cinema became about the truth of the moment. You know, cinema came out of the big studios onto the streets of Paris.
Okay.
Right? So Francois Truffaut is one of my, you know, biggest inspirations. So which is my probably why I don't use too many lights, because I want the characters to come alive. If I'm going to place the characters with, you know, lights to the left and right, if they look to the left, there's going to be a big light. If they look to the right, there's going to be a big light. Right? It doesn't create realism, you know. I want the, like, for example, in Venduthan in the Kadu, Simbusa had, like, mentioned in his interviews also, he never knew where the lights were. Because the lights were always outside the room. that's when they can come alive.
Okay.
They can get into the, I don't know. That's what
I get it. It has to be seamless for them.
Yeah, it has to be. Then they can move anywhere they want. If I'm going to place a light 2 feet to the right in a close up, 2 feet to the whichever, next to them, it's going to be like they're frozen in time. You know.
I get
So I want them to be living, breathing, like because I want them to be free of all constraint of space and time, and I feel that it works because then if they look to the left, they see the wall, and then maybe there's a picture there. Maybe there's a the eye line will be clear where they can look at the surrounding, and the camera becomes invisible.
Okay, intent of the scene. See, Captain Miller, coming back to it again, like a lot of emotional scenes and monologues where you go tight and handheld camera use பண்ணிருப்பீங்க. So how do you decide when to use handheld and when to go dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. See, it's shot division, right? It's about, see, when a scene is being shot, it's about staging first. What happens in that 2 minutes? Suppose a scene could be however long you want it to be, right? But how do you want to stage it?
Okay.
What does a character do? Does a character go from here to there and then turn around and walk to the end of the room? What is the staging, and then we decide upon, the shot division. Okay, now this is what is happening. This is how spatially the scene is taking place. Now we decide upon what are the shots how do you want to tell this scene, right?
So when does an actor improvise? For example, Captain Miller, that's scenes where like on spot improvise ஆகும்போது அந்த இடத்துல நீங்க அதுக்கு ஏத்த மாதிரி ஸ்டேஜிங்லாம் மாத்த வேண்டியது இருக்கும் இல்லையா? So அந்த மாதிரி ஏதாச்சா?
Absolutely. Like when Dhanush was he's very spontaneous, and like I said, you want to capture them in their element, so you let them loose, right? And then just that it's a little bit more difficult for the focus puller and the operator. They will probably suffer, but
running around.
Yeah. But I think that freedom is important. There will be improvisation. Like actor might do something spontaneous at that moment, but we should be ready to capture it. That is where handheld camera helps.
Okay.
Because if the camera is stationary on a tripod, you can't move it. However, that's why Arun, wanted it to be completely shot handheld. The inspiration was from South American films. So
okay.
It's classical. It's classical framing in a very South American, shooting style. So the framing will be very classical, but the movement will be very handheld. So that was the visual grammar that we had discussed. Okay. And handheld helps give you that freedom to move wherever you want, so that you're not surprised.
But that is like totally the action scenes அப்படி எடுக்க முடியாதுல. For example, ஒரு chase scene இருக்கு அப்படினா அதுக்கு you have to meticulously plan முன்னாடியே.
Yeah.
And this had a lot of dynamic drone shots and you following the action and stuff like that.
That's why we shot for 80 days.
80 days.
We didn't shoot it in 20 days. We shot for 80 days.
Okay, honestly, action scenes கஷ்டமா இருந்துச்சா for you to shoot, or
action is never easy?
Never easy?
No, it's never easy. It's physically demanding.
What is your favorite part of cinematography? Like, take Captain Miller for example. Was the planning the most interesting thing about the thing, or like actually அங்க உட்கார்ந்துட்டு நீங்க பார்க்கிறது தான் உங்களுக்கு இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கா இருக்குமா? Which is the most interesting part of your job? Want to know.
I'm more of a planner. I plan things out. With Miller, what has happened is, Captain Miller, we were in Kutralam for like 6 months. So we went into the world. We became like the villagers. Every morning we used to get up at 5:30, 6, get to location by 7:30 and start shooting till 6 p.m. If there's a night shoot, we'd continue, or else we'll come back and sleep. There's nothing that you can do.
A lot of night shoots, I guess.
Lots.
And you guys, like, it's a serious film, but you guys seem to have some kind of fun with it. For example, ending la, Was that an homage to the Avengers hero shot that I saw? Like இந்த மூணு பேரும் வரும்போது லைட்டா ஒரு பேன் பண்ணி மூணு பேரும் வர மாஸ்.
I think that's the...
அங்க பேசுனீங்களா நீங்க அந்த ஷாட் எடுக்கும்போது?
Yeah, that morning I remember going to the set and I'm like, என்ன ஷாட் எடுக்க போறோம்? Okay, this troll, sir. I was telling to the stunt coordinator, like, கொஞ்சம் மாஸா இருக்கு. But okay, it worked with the screen. So because till then we were going a certain grammar, so
அந்த இடத்துல மட்டும் நீங்க கரெக்ட்டா ரூல் பிரேக் பண்ணி
completely Avengers மாதிரி.
These are all unpredictable elements, like because it's a war sequence now, has to be horses running around and like avlo pera crowd alla manage pannanom and explosions have to go, safety.
It's been it's logistics. In the end it's like you're managing 100,000 people, you know, on an everyday basis. It's been great fun, honestly. Honestly grateful for it.
So you're game to be back on Captain Miller 2,
whenever.
The prequel?
Yeah, whenever.
Really? Interesting.
For more bomb blasts. Let's see.
So now we have a taste for action, I see.
Yeah, looks like it.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, actually.
Welcome.